Okay, we're talking today about, basically we're looking at engine removal. But what we're supposed to do before we get ready to pull the engine out is what we're supposed to do. One of the things we're supposed to do is we're supposed to make sure that we need to pull the engine out first. You guys have, some of y'all guys have been around cars and stuff a lot and mechanic work. And have you ever seen anything happen where somebody pulled an engine out and they found out they didn't need to? Do you ever do that? You know?
I've done it twice.
That's
everything easier.
That's an honest man over there. Seen these situations, and that's really a bad feeling when you've gone a long way and done a bunch of work that you didn't need to do. You find out after you pull it out, well, we just really didn't need to do that, you know. And if you better make sure that you have a problem that merits that. And it doesn't feel very good if you have gone to the point where you got the engine out. That's why one guy, the shop foreman at the place where I was used to work, said they flying through these jobs real fast, and they had an engine and locked up, he wouldn't turn and all that, and so you go pull the motor out. About the time we got the motor out, they saw that the water pump had locked up and the pulley was crooked, and it had held the engine where it made it appear it was locked up. This one girl that was in here said that she said, my car won't start this morning. My dad says it needs a starter. And so I said, well, we can put a starter on it. And so I told some of the guys, I said, go over there to her house and bring that car back over here. So they went over here and dragged it over here. And the only thing that was wrong with it, the air conditioner compressor was locked up. I took the belt off. Well, I noticed when Hunter Brown was pulling on the crankshaft bolt, I saw the belt slipping on the AC compressor. So he was actually moving the engine, but the belt was slipping, the AC compressor was sitting still, everything else was turning. I said, now pull the belt off, and it fired up. That's all I needed. Didn't have to have a starter. And we found an old AC compressor. How many of you know that Advanced Auto Parts sometimes has got a little pulley and bracket assembly that will replace the AC compressor?
Really?
Yeah, they've actually got those. In other words, if you, like say you've got an old car and the belt's routed so that the AC compressor's gotten to be on there, but now the bearing has locked up in the AC compressor pulley, and I don't want to put another compressor on there. I don't want to buy this bearing to put on there. Well, they got this little thing where it's made to pull the compressor off. Just unhook the lines from it, tie them back or whatever. You bolt this bracket up, and there's a pulley exactly the same size as the AC compressor, and it just acts like an idler. And I have known of them having those. But anyway, bolts used for engine lifting should be at least 1/4 inch in diameter.
A little bit bigger than that.
That's pretty little, isn't it?
Yeah.
They need to be bigger than that. And I'll tell you something else too. You better make doggone sure you're using a good chain or a cable. You don't want any surprises.
I've had one break before.
Yeah.
But it was old though. It was old.
Yeah.
I picked it up probably about that far.
Yeah.
And it said, boom!
Yeah. This one girl told me,
my dad was under the car.
She said, she said my husband, she told me, she said my husband was pulling the engine out of this Mustang at the house over there, and about the time he got the engine out, the board started breaking. And I was thinking, okay, so what did he have this board hooked to? What kind of board was it, Okay, let's look at here. Front wheel drive vehicle.
Number one is false, right?
Huh?
Number one's false.
Number one's false. Front wheel drive vehicles usually have one engine mount on each side of the engine.
No.
Okay, that's front wheel drive vehicles. What do they have?
They got one on the side of the engine, one in the front, and one in the rear.
Yeah, usually you have a couple of transmission mounts, and you'll have an engine mount on the end, and you may have some dog bones, which would be the little struts that keep the engine rocking. You know what a dog bone is, Brendan? Let's ask him a question. He goes,
I do. There's one on my STI that went from the rear of the transmission to the flywheel.
You'll see those things, we call them dog bones in the business. You'll see a strut coming off the engine like that, or some kind of way, and then you'll see one over here on the heavy part of the frame close to the radiator, and it'll be a thing that looks like this. That's what it's called a dog bone, because it's big on each end, little in the middle, and that actually keeps the engine from doing this. And that Ford 500 had a strut on the bottom and the top to prevent that engine from moving, All right, so use the shortest possible boom length on the engine hoist to center the end of the boom over the engine.
Well, it depends on how big
Huh?
It
Well, what you're trying to do, and the purpose of this, is you don't want any surprises. I'm going to tell you what happens here. I saw this happen one time. I bought a brand new lift engine hoist off of these guys. People used to drive around the country out there, and they have a press, an engine hoist, a bunch of air tools, and all this, and they would sell you the whole package for like $700. And it was a lot of tools. And you know, they just drive around with that on a pickup truck, and they make a sale every now and then. And the guy that I was working for on Weeds Harvest bought one. And when we got that engine hoist out of the truck, the lower part of it, of course, it was sitting on wheels, it was like that. And you know, here's your thing into the jack going up. This thing right here was extended way out here with its hook on it. And of course, these right here were extendable too. But the way it was configured so he could haul it in his truck, he had this telescoped way out. I see, my boss man's brother had never used an engine hoist before, or if he did, he didn't pay attention to what was going on. He picked an engine up with it that was sitting on the concrete, and everything seemed like it was going okay until he went to lower it, and he started lowering it a little too fast. And then he turned off the jack, and the engine hoist tilted, and the engine goes bam and hit the floor and bent the oil pan because this was sticking out too far. Now the safe way to do it is to have these way out here and this. See what I'm saying? If you got the legs way out and it's here, then that's going to give you a safer lift. That's what they're talking about, and that's what we're trying to get you to recognize. I mean, you better pay attention. Tell you something else too, and this was spooky. The guys were talking the other day about taking an engine. It's going to draw a big block here, and hooking the chains down here and picking it up. And what's wrong with that picture? As soon as you get it clear, it's going to go whoop, boom, and hit the floor. Don't grab it from the bottom unless you got something holding the top, so it won't do that. You know what I mean? If you hold it from the bottom and you're on it, it's going to high center and flip. You know what I'm saying? That make any sense? Why are you looking confused?
Oh, because there was a guy that just walked in here and walked out.
Huh?
There was a guy that walked in here and then walked out.
What guy?
I was waiting on him.
Yeah, well, you may have been thinking there was something else going on. Okay, let's keep going. Engine accessories must be removed before the engine can be removed. What is an engine accessory?
AC.
Yeah, that's one of them. What else?
Fire harness.
Power steering pump.
Okay, now you can get the answer to that question from the experience that you guys had with that Dodge. Did you pull all of that stuff off before you pulled it out?
Yeah.
You did not.
Not all of it.
The belt was on it,
Steering belt.
and all of the accessories were still on it. The alternator was on it, the power steering pump was on it, the AC compressor can even be taken off with it. You can pull all of it out in a big wad, but you got to unhook the stuff from it.
That was number 3.
And
Is that
number
true?
3
That's
is
true.
actually, that's true. Number 4 is false.
Yeah.
Okay, oil rings are more easily removed by holding one end and peeling the ring out of the groove.
Pretty much.
You know what oil rings are, right?
Yeah.
It's just the oil ring on the bottom is kind of like a squeegee.
I just took 2 of them all.
Right, yeah. And what we can do here with these pistons here, we can take that ring off like that, see? Got to make sure you put it back on there right. And then you're going to take this one off like that right there. If we can do it without breaking the ring, we're good. There you go. I didn't break the ring. All right, now this one here, see when you're going to pull that one out, you got to get the end of it, right? You get the end of that thing, and if you can ever get it to start coming out, you can peel it off like that right there. Now, if you ever bend this a little bit, you don't go use it because you're going to have an cylinder that pumps oil. But that's a little squeegee that operates with a separator, and you take the other one out. So you got a oil scraper ring above and below that separator, and then this separator here goes in the groove. So we got our piston rings off of there just like that. See there? Now these parts right here, these right here are called ring lands. See what that in between there, and that kind of thing. So, and that piston's brand new. I don't know what these pistons were for, but they called me up to the front office when I had been working here for about 2 or 3 years, and they said, "We've got some tools up here that somebody was supposed to pay for and didn't pay for, and we want to know if you want those because we don't want to store them up here anymore." And I said, "I don't know what kind of tools you're talking about." So I went up there and they had a whole bunch of pistons and these pistons here, and I don't know what they were for, but apparently there was some dispute about the ticket and something, I don't know what the deal with it before I came. But I brought all them pistons back there and I've been using for training ever since. Okay, so oil rings are more easily removed by holding one end and peeling the ring out of the groove. That's number 5, and that is true. That's what you just saw me do. A major advantage of shot blasting is the part being clean can actually be strengthened.
Does that really strengthen it? I've read a bunch of places where it says it does. I don't know.
Well,
if it does.
basically, you can, it depends. What happens is when you shot blast it, it's kind of like, I mean, if this is my perspective, I may be totally all stupid and backwards and wrong about this, but you know how whenever you take and bend a piece of wire back and forth, it gets harder? And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It basically, the impact causes the molecular change to be a little bit. You know, in shot blasting, you ever seen these cabinets where you stick your hands in these gloves that are permanent, made part of the cabinet, and you look through the window, and then you can do that, and all of that's contained. You see what I'm saying? That's just basically what I'm talking about. You know what shot blasting was. Okay. Now then, we're going to try to get on through here. Let me see. Abrasive cleaning may be used to clean engine. Now, incidentally, number 6 is true about the shot blasting. Abrasive cleaning may be used to clean steam clean engine blocks or intake manifolds as well as certain cylinder heads. I would not abrasive clean any. You know, you can't just abrasive clean anything and everything. That's nonsense. You know, you can, and I will tell you something too, unless you've got the stuff to do it, you know, you can't use the old-fashioned cylinder head machining tools to machine the cylinder heads on something like that Navigator. Incidentally, I got that tool to hold the crankshaft.
Did you?
Yeah, finally came in. $90 worth. Yeah.
I already got it done now.
Yeah. Let's hope that it's right. So.
It's right.
Yeah. he's sure of himself. We'll see. If it's not, we'll know how to time it though. All right, now then, we're going to take, you know, I was thinking about that, Wes, before you put the belts and all that crud on it,
Try and crank
you probably ought to plug everything and bust that thing off, see if it'll start up. Because you can do it without anything on it, you know, it ought to
it. Just
start
don't
up.
on my house.
Yeah. You ever start one up hanging from the chain? Just make sure it runs? Yeah. All right, let's see. To remove the 2 small keepers from the valve stem, a valve spring compressor is used. You know what we're talking about there, don't you? The 2 small keepers from the valve spring. Right on top of the valve, there's a couple of little half-moon looking creepers that go in, keepers that go in grooves, and you got to squeeze the valve spring down to make that happen, right? Okay. Let's move on here. We're 12 minutes into our let's look at positive rotators used on some valves makes it less likely deposit will form on the valve seat.
I would miss one.
Huh? No, excuse me, did I miss that? Incidentally, 10, which is one I just read, is true. A rotator actually turns the valve while it's opening and closing so that it makes it last longer and it's not as likely to burn and gets deposits. Loosen and remove the head bolts in the same order as the bolt tightening sequence.
That's not true in everything.
As given in vehicle service information. Well, that's why they say as given in vehicle service information. But that answer, that's false. Yeah. Now, I tell you what, there's some intake manifolds, especially on these aluminum block V engines. If you don't loosen those intake manifold bolts in the right order, it'll warp that manifold and you won't be able to get it off there. I mean, that seems strange. It just distorts it if you don't loosen them in the right pattern. Just, you know.
So they're torqued down so tight.
Yeah, they're torqued down pretty tight, but that manifold's been warming cold and warming cold and warming cold a lot, and things have a tendency to change shape. The strangest weird thing that I've seen was how we would put this big old valve body back up on this transmission. Everything built the transmission, and the transmission was acting stupid and crazy and didn't want to do right and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, we're going to go back in there. So just, you know, we got it good and hot trying to, you know, checking in pressures and all that stuff. And so the next day, or that's after all weekend, and the following Monday, I says, pull it around onto this other lift over here, and let's get it up and get ready to start taking it back down. And the transmission worked perfectly. And I said, that's weird. So I called Jimmy, because he does transmissions over, and at that particular account when he wrote it. He said, yeah, that happened to me the first time I did one of those. He said, I thought I'd done something wrong. But he said, if you heat it up and get it good and hot, it gives the valve body a chance to get warm and cold and seat and get mated, even though you've torqued all the bolts real good. And it's a valve body so big, you know, and it's thin enough to where it changes shape. And so there's fluid passing from one passage to the next when it's not supposed to be, but after you heat it up and cool it down, everything, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what happened on that one. It was just, you know, got really good to go.
Is there
That was strange.
is there several of them, or is there more of them than just that one time to do that, or?
I don't know of any of them that did it except that 4R55E and that kind of thing, 4L, excuse me, 4R44 to 4R55, that bunch. That's what we were working on when it happened. And they got a big old valve body with aluminum valves in it, all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but I saw it when I recall Jimmy, he goes, oh yeah, it happens sometimes. And I talked to this guy over in Dothan at that's really at a transmission shop. And he goes, yeah, that happens. I was thinking, well, nobody goes. I did transmissions in the field. I never ran into that. So it's really amazing what you can run into at the school that you never saw out there. Like every time we go to take, I say that, a lot of times we go to take wheels off, it'd be like, Brandon, hey, I can't get the lug nuts off this thing. So I go, oh, come on. And then I go over there and I can't get them off either. Because they're all seized up and you're trying to take them off. They turn a little bit and then stop. And then it starts twisting off lug studs because somebody over-tightened them with the impact wrench, Greg. All right. Let's go down here to 11. For engine removal, first remove the vehicle's what?
Hood.
Yeah, you got to take the hood off. And we've done that a lot around here, haven't we? Pull the hood off. What did you originally put? Were you changing your answer over there?
You didn't take the hood off first.
All right. Take the hood off first. Okay, Brandon, you'll answer this next one. The blank cleaning process is used for small parts such as valve springs, spring retainers, and valve keepers.
Safe.
Huh?
Safe.
It's actually vibratory. All right. Now, how many of you guys have ever seen this Berryman cleaner that you soak carburetors in?
Come on, like
It's a 5-gallon bucket with a basket in there, and you better not stick your hand in there. This is a vile concoction. It is really nasty, and you can soak engine parts in that, and boy, do they ever come out looking like brand new. When you diff them out of there, you wash them off.
It's almost like acid, isn't it?
There's some kind of stuff in there, but I've never analyzed what's in it. I've used it for years and years and years and years and years, particularly on carburetors. But if you got pistons that you won't clean, you can put a piston in there that's just all filthy and been in there a long time, and it'll come out looking like this one here that I got.
Yeah.
It'll come out looking like that. It's just absolutely beautiful what that stuff does. But I will tell you this, if you stick your hand down in there, you're going to go, and you shall almost surely die. All right. So blank cleaning is used to clean pistons, valves, and connecting rods, which is what I was just holding in my hand a second ago. 13. What's that? Abrasive cleaning. Right. You're going to clean that stuff off. Now, I will tell you this. Don't ever take a piston like this and hold it on the wire wheel so that the wire bristles are brushing down this way. Because what that does is it fouls up where the rings go, and the rings can just start wallering. So if you're ever going to clean one of these, you be real gentle and you go around the side. Now they actually make a tool for cleaning the carbon out of the grooves and all that. Now most of that carbon will be gone after you soak it in that Berryman soap. Oh, the downside of that Berryman carburetor soak I was talking about is it costs about $90 for 5 gallons.
Well, you can get it in a little paint can now.
You can get a small one, yeah.
Yeah, but it's still like $45, $50.
It's expensive. I got a couple of cans back here of it. Yeah.
Why do you tell me that?
Huh? What?
I said, why do you tell me that?
Yeah. Well, we got some because we didn't want to. I didn't want you doing your private engine parts in it. I figured I'd have something really important to do one of these days. And anyway, that was just something that I actually got it back here for carburetors, as if we were going to do carburetors again. Ain't wrong. The following components must be reinstalled in their original position. A, pistons and connecting rods. Is that true? What about lifters, push rods, and rocker arms? What about all of the above?
I just say all of them.
Temperature and pressure sensors. Now, what makes the least difference? Now, the pistons and the connecting rods need to go back where they came from.
Yeah.
And they need, and you got to make sure you put them in there with the arrow pointing toward the front and all that stuff. But lifters, push rods, and rocker arms, how many times have you just popped them back on there any kind of way? Most people do. Now, if you got a mechanic that's a little stickler, he's going to line them things up in order. He's going to put them back just like they were. But it's not the kiss of death if you don't put them back in there right. You'll have more trouble with putting pistons in the wrong place than you will anything else, and particularly connecting rods. Although you can mix them around, like for instance, this engine here that was on the stand was knocking when I first put it on the stand. It was in an old 88 model Suburban somebody had donated. And so I didn't know, somebody started pulling the engine out from the previous group that was another instructor, and so we needed that. And so the first engine that was on that stand was a 4.3, V8. Did you hear what I said?
4.3.
4.3 V8. It was like a 350, but it was a 4.3.
The first,
Yeah, the
4.3s,
265 or what? Huh?
the first 4.3s, were they just,
It was a V8, looked like a 350.
You think it'd be a V6?
Yeah, exactly. But it was a small V8, looked just like a 350. You couldn't tell it wasn't a 350. But it was in a Malibu station wagon.
Huh.
We're talking, it was a boring car, okay? So that was sitting here on the floor, had just been rebuilt, the exhaust system was there, everything. So we dragged that stand over, it used to be a table that was built out of some stuff. And I said, let's just, I lifted it up, made some mounts out of, old steel plate and all that. And we mounted it up just like you see out there right now. I put a bell housing on it to keep the flywheel from spinning out here where somebody get their hand in it, All right, so anyway, when everything was all over and done with, we ran that thing for a while, like a semester or two. And then one day, and we hadn't done any work in the bottom end of it. I guess whoever built it before I came here left something not torqued or something, because one of them days we just had it running out there on that stand and something come undone in there and it started knocking and locked up. And so I said, okay, now we got to have an engine on the stand, so let's get the 350 out of that 88 Suburban and put it in here. So we put that in there, and it was knocking to beat the band. That's why so what I did in there was I put a bunch of STP in it, about 4 or 5 or 6 bottles of thick STP, and it didn't knock anymore. We could still use it. And then finally I told Jimmy, I said, I'm going to buy a crankshaft kit and some stuff. We're going to build that engine, upright. And so he threw it together for me. But 2 of the rods were egg-shaped because it had been knocking so much. And he goes, I think I got some rods and pistons over here at the house. And Jimmy was kind of funny. He said, I got an old, some kind of old Ford car that had a 4-cylinder motor in it. It was sitting out there in the pasture. And he said, I had a bunch of parts laying around in the dirt over there. And he said, I just kind of cleaned them parts off, and I threw that thing together with used gaskets and all this kind of junk, and got it fired up. And he says, my brother drove that thing all the way to Enterprise and got back to Ballard Bridge on the way home before it come apart. But I mean, he was just building a drive around in the field, just out of junk. That's the kind of stuff Jimmy would do. Just whenever he was, at home before he ever even took automotive school, he could build an engine, just out of scratch, just from trash. Just put an engine together that would run. And I thought, nothing quite feels like that. That Sable we got out there, we built it out of junk parts. After that one boy blew the motor up, when the gas pedal stuck under the floor mat, when I told him to bring it up to 1500, he thought he ought to go all the way to the floor and come back to 1500 when the gas pedal stuck under the floor mat. That thing blew 2 rods, and Frank, the old Gulf War veteran, he liked to have jumped over the table because he was, still with that little bit of shell shock there. Man, that thing was loud. It sounded like a cannon went off right in front of him. It threw 2 rods, knocked the whole side of the block, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we got another engine off the shelf over and put junk parts in it and got it running. That's why it don't run the greatest in the world, but it runs. Nobody's gonna drive it again anyway. That was a war story that I got off into. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. Remove the valve train components before removing the cylinder head on what kind of engine? Hello? Anybody know? Overhead cam, overhead valve, dual overhead cam, or what?
Hello.
No, come on.
Is it B?
Overhead valve is what?
Same thing as overhead cam.
Is it?
Well, no. That's it's in the block.
What engine can you think of where the valves aren't overhead?
The 350?
No. The lawnmower engine, like a Briggs & Stratton.
Oh, yeah. They're
Around the block, or like a flathead, like an old Ford. But, or the Continental engine, like you see in a forklift or something. But like, we're going to do this here, they call them overhead valve. For why? Camshafts in the block. Valves are still overhead. Well, I don't know where that name come from. I mean, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
And,
Hey,
hello.
Richard,
Yes, sir.
David Musgrove. David just talked to you.
Yeah. She said something about you had a ball joint. Hang on a second. I'm finishing this up. I'll be right with you.
Okay.
All right. No problem. All right. Then let me see what we got here. Now basically, we're basically going on number 15. It's going to be B. Is what they're saying. But that's stupid. You know why? Well, why do you need to? Well, I say it is stupid, but not. Valve train components being what? Push rods.
Oh, push rod.
Rocker arms and all that kind of thing. And I was thinking when I first read that, that's why I said stupid, and it wasn't stupid. I was thinking camshafts, But you don't really have to, you removed the valve train components on your Navigator, which that's cool as all get out. I just love that. You know how you pop them rocker arms out of there and you can just turn the camshaft any way you want to, and the valves are always closed. You got to worry about hitting nothing. But the 4-liter single overhead cams like that, the Navigators are like that, 4.6, you know, 5.4 and Navigators like that. And that's really a cool way to do that. And some of them,
It made everything easier.
oh yeah, it made it a lot easier. You can just turn it. And, you know, in camshafts, you know, or when you're turning them and you're trying to get everything to line up, they go doom 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 doom. You know, you're all doing that. But if you, that's one of the reasons too. They have to have zero lash if they're gear-driven camshafts. Because if you don't have zero lash or phenolic gears or something, no, it's going to be noisy.
Oh yeah.
Lang, 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 lang. It's going to rattle up a storm. And the old Volkswagens used to have 10 different grinds of camshafts, and they start at 0 and they go plus, you know, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, minus plus, and you had to set it so that they had no lash whatsoever. If you had any lash at all, you'd have a noisy bug engine and all that. So you'd actually have to go to the parts guy and say, I need a +2 camshaft. Put it in there, measure your lash if you like what you read, you know. Now some of them will use phenolic gears.
What is that?
That's like a gear that's made out of a fiber composite material, so they wouldn't beat so bad. General Motors did that on 2.5s, and they would come apart. You know, so, and some of the Ford 2.8s had that, like in the older Mustang 2s and stuff. They had a big old phenolic gear back there, and it would just, you know, all of a sudden it'd bust up, and you wouldn't have any cam operation. Now, do you guys got matching?
Yes, sir.
You got matching. Okay, let's go to matching. Sometimes I cut those matching questions off. What's used in an engine to lift? What's used to lift an engine out of the engine bay?
Your hands. See.
Oh, please.
I have done it before.
I know it, but it depends on what you're lifting it out of. You know, if it's a Power Stroke diesel, you're not going to move it by hand.
It was 400 pounds.
Unless you're Mark Van Wagner, and then he was able to do that. And that's another story. That's a C. Now, duh, it's an engine hoist. Rubber or hydraulic insulator between the engine and frame, body of the vehicle, or what? G. Engine mounts. You ever seen any fluid-filled engine mounts?
No.
You ever seen any engine mounts that were electronic?
No.
Electronic.
Electronic.
What'd you see those on?
Like, I think Lexus almost got that.
Yeah. Yeah,
What do they
the
do?
engine mounts are electronic. Whenever they apply power to them, they get stiffer or softer depending on what, you know.
And the Honda's rear engine mount is
Answer that.
gel
one.
filled.
Just say automotive.
LBW Automotive.
Okay. All right. Right
Hold
here.
on 1 second. He's in class, my
Let me see here. Let me see. Go back to the next question. Subframe used in most front-wheel drive vehicles that have a transverse mounted engine. It's what?
Engine cradle.
That's E. Engine cradle. All right. Water-based fluid with a detergent additive.
I hate Mr. Fee, but that's somebody wanting to pay some money.
That's J. Hello.
Jay.
Hey. $200. Just tell it. Just get a couple $100 from him. All right. All right. Okay. There we go. Let me see. Designed to support the engine, allow it to be rotated.
Engine hoist.
Yeah, that's number 20. That's B. Engine stand. Applies liquid solvent and air pressure to clean engine parts and assemblies. 21.
I don't know. I think it's J.
That's an I. That's the pressure washer. You know what, me and this was kind of dumb on my part, but Chelsea and me, we figured we were going to take the pressure washer out there, which is basically like a car wash pressure washer, but it gets pretty darn hot. And we were going to, you know, wash out. We're going to see if we could blast enough steam through that radiator maybe to get most of the oil out of it. Well, I decided to replace the radiator anyway, so it didn't matter. But that steam cleaner was so doggone hot, it was melting the plastic part of that radiator. So be careful with that. I mean, if you're using that on any kind of plastic parts, if you hold it too close for too long, that water will start to erode that plastic. Now, I will tell you this about radiators, plastic radiators. My recommendation on a plastic radiator, and a lot of people are going to say this is wrong and stupid and all that, if you really want to protect yourself from a breakdown, you probably should replace your plastic radiator at about 120,000 miles. They don't cost that much. Some of them are a little harder to change than others. But how many times, and you probably see them, you see them split, destroy an engine? It ain't worth it. I mean, for $110 or $115, $120, even $150, I'm gonna put a $150 radiator in there instead of having it split when you're driving down the road. Your mama's driving it down the road, and all of a sudden she's clunking over to the side of the road with warped heads and everything's destroyed. But if you put the radiator, I'll tell you something else that'll be replaced at about that same mileage too. This is me talking again. Is the belt tensioner?
Yeah.
Because those things will pop without warning. I mean, it's pop. I mean, they'll break, and you'll just all of a sudden have no belt. But don't get a cheap one. Do not buy a cheap. If you get a belt tensioner and it says made in China or made in Korea or something, put it aside and go to the dealership and just pay the bucks for the real deal. I'm telling you, the pulley will get crooked. It'll cause the belt to squeak. It'll throw the belt off. I even have a video on YouTube about that. If you're putting a belt tensioner on there, I'm talking about one of these spring-loaded ones, you know, you better doggone well get a good one, because the cheap one ain't gonna get the job done. All right, I'm almost through here. Bear with me for a second. Let me see.
Ring rage.
Number 22
Ring rage.
is caused by normal cylinder wall wear due to piston ring travel, needs to be removed with a reamer. That is a ridge reamer, but I haven't seen a ridge in a cylinder wall in 20 years. We used to see them all the time, and the one right behind where the water pump water hits the cylinder walls was the one that would be the most deepest ridge. Right there behind the water pump, you find the deepest ridge. And I've had to ream ridges to get pistons out, but in a long time, since they've used lower tension piston rings, I'll never see no ridge. You can have an engine with 200,000 miles on it, and you drag your finger through there, and you can tell you where the ring stops.
What are you talking about?
Huh?
What'd you say the rings were?
Low tension piston rings.
What does that mean?
They're skinny and they don't squeeze the wall as tight
Oh.
as them older ones. They're on your old, like on the old 350s and everything. Those old cast iron V8s like the Fords and all, and the GMs and Dodges. You'd find a lot of a heavy ridge at the top. You don't see those anymore much. I mean, everybody talks about ridge reamers. I got one in there, and my problem is it's hard to demonstrate it whenever you've reamed all the ridges you have. You know what I'm saying? How can you ream a ridge if there's no ridge to ream? You know?
I've never reamed a 350.
Yeah, I've reamed ridges. You know, I learned to do that in the 1970s. Involves the use of machine often called tumblers. 23.
Hey?
That's vibratory cleaning. Okay, number 24, also called glass bead blasting. What is that? That's abrasive
Okay.
cleaning. And then 25, also called oven cleaning. Okay, let me say this before we quit. Don't jump and run. Like, sometimes you guys will jump and run when I'm not quite through. Cylinder heads on some of the four-cylinder Ford vehicles that we had on Escorts and all, real expensive, and sometimes they get warped a little bit. And sometimes they were warped enough to where you couldn't machine them if they were warped beyond machine tolerances. And so the guy that we had over there the pretty good engineer, the guy that worked in the machine shop, he took a thick piece of steel that he got from somewhere, and he put it in a cylinder head machine, and we had a machine to do cylinder heads over there to resurface them. And he resurfaced this piece of steel real flat with a cylinder head machine. And then he took an Escort cylinder head and he set it on that, and he marked the holes and tapped them. And he would take a cylinder head that was warped beyond tolerances from an Escort, and he would bolt it down to that piece of steel real tight. I mean, torque it down to specs and do the torque to yield and everything like that. And then he would put this cylinder head in an oven that he built. He built it from scratch. And he would heat that thing up to 550 or 600 degrees and let it sit there for about 3 hours. And then when he'd drag it out of there, when it cooled down, that cylinder head would be within tolerance so that it could either be used without machining or it could be machined. And he came up with that. Now, I read about it somewhere, and I'm sure there's other people that's done it, but he built all the stuff to do that with. That was
What do you
pretty.
make the oven on?
Huh?
What do you make the oven on?
He actually used some sheet metal, and he used a metal brake, and he just bent a little, the metal around, built a housing with a little thermostat and all that kind of stuff, got a heating element, just like something you cook with. And he put a gasket around the lid, and he'd heat that thing up 500-600 degrees. And you could use a regular oven, I guess.
You do that on just about any of these levels.
Yeah, you probably could, but it was pretty amazing. But he had it specifically for Escort cylinder heads. See, he had that thing just for that, and he did a bunch of them like that. Anyway,
Very
so
cool.
just thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
All right.